Your life, you're reenacting it. Over and over, automatically, involuntarily, predictably. Not because you lack discipline, but because your biology memorized you long before you ever became aware of yourself. Neuroscience tells us that by the time you're 35, 95% of who you are isn't conscious. It's a library of memorized emotional reactions, conditioned thoughts, survival strategies, identity patterns, and unconscious behaviors so deeply encoded that they run on autopilot. That means you're living with only 5% conscious intention battling against 95% unconscious programming. And every time you say, I'm going to change, what you're really saying is, the 5% of me that's awake is going to challenge the 95% of me that's sleepwalking. That is not a fair fight. This is why tomorrow never changes. Because your tomorrow is being controlled by yesterday. Before you even open your eyes in the morning, your body is already rehearsing the past. The same familiar emotions, the same chemical signatures of worry, inadequacy, urgency, or fear. The same thoughts that tell the same story about who you are. And the moment you feel those familiar emotions, the program has already started running. Your body takes over. It becomes the mind. This is the part most people never understand. Your body is not following your thoughts, and your thoughts are following your body. Your nervous system is not responding to your consciousness. Your consciousness is responding to your nervous system. You wake up, and before you even think a new thought, you've already entered the character of the old you. And once that character steps in, the day is set. Not because you're weak, not because you're undisciplined, but because your body is addicted to who you've been, and every addiction fights to stay alive. This is where the loop begins, the loop that is stolen years from people who meant to change, who wanted to change, who believed they would change. A loop that keeps you reliving the same internal world no matter how much your external world shifts. Because no matter how much you intellectually desire transformation, your biology is loyal to the past. And until you learn how to break that loyalty, nothing new can enter your life. This is the starting point, the reckoning, the moment you finally stop blaming yourself and start understanding yourself. Because you're not broken, you're programmed. And what has been programmed can be rewritten. You wake up each morning believing you're starting a new day, but you're not. You're stepping into the residue of who you were yesterday, and the day before, and every day for the last 20 years. Before your consciousness even switches on, your body has already begun its ritual. The familiar tension in your chest, the same old thoughts drifting in like background noise, the automatic emotional tone that settles over you before you even leave your bed. This isn't you thinking, this is you remembering. Not remembering with your mind, but with your physiology. Your body is replaying the past. Think about it. Before your feet touch the floor, you've already rehearsed your identity. You've already inhabited the version of you who doubts, who shrinks, who worries, who reacts. The version of you who thinks the same thoughts about the same people, who carries the same emotional blueprint into every interaction. And once the blueprint activates, your day is no longer in your control. You're simply following the script. Most people think their emotional state is a response to the day, but the truth is more unsettling. Their day is a response to their emotional state. Their nervous system wakes up in the past, and the world rearranges itself to match it. The same triggers, the same conflicts, the same disappointments, the same cycles. Not because life is repeating, but because the self is. And why does this happen? Because your biology has concluded that the familiar, no matter how painful, is safe. The unfamiliar, even if it holds your highest potential, is coded as danger. So your body keeps pulling you back, not out of punishment, but out of protection. It believes staying the same is survival. And so, it does everything in its power to keep you from becoming who you want to be. This is why you feel like you're fighting yourself. Because you are. There is a version of you that wants expansion, expression, possibility. And there is a version of you that wants safety, predictability, familiarity. And the familiar almost always wins. Not because it's stronger, but because it's older. It has decades of reinforcement, decades of emotional repetition, decades of neural pathways carved into your brain like deep grooves in ancient stone. So every time you try to speak up, to set a boundary, to choose differently, your body pulls you back. It whispers, no, this is unsafe. This isn't who we are. And suddenly you shrink again. You disappear again. You abandon yourself again. Not consciously, automatically, because your nervous system is running a survival protocol that doesn't match your present reality. And here's what makes this even more profound. Your childhood didn't just shape your mind, It shaped your chemistry. If you grew up in an environment where being expressive wasn't safe, your biology wired itself to suppress your voice. If you learned early that your needs created tension, you learned to erase them. Most people never realize how early their patterns were carved into them. They assume their reactions are adult choices, shaped by logic, maturity, and experience. But the truth is far more haunting. Your adult reactions are the echoes of a child who learned how to survive long before. You had language for what you were feeling. The 7-year-old version of you, the one who learned which emotions were allowed, which truths were dangerous, which needs created conflict, is still running your nervous system today. Not metaphorically, literally. Think about your childhood. Not the dramatic events, not the obvious traumas, but the invisible ones, the silence, the tension, the emotional unpredictability. You learned quickly which parts of yourself were safe to express and which parts were too risky. If your home required you to be quiet, you learned to mute yourself. If your caregivers needed you to stay small so they could stay comfortable, you learned to shrink. If the people around you couldn't regulate their own emotions, you learned to regulate them for them. You became the observer, the manager, the protector, and a child with the instincts of an adult. And the nervous system remembers all of it. That's why today, when someone raises their voice, you don't think and you react. Your body contracts, your chest tightens, your breath shortens. You feel yourself collapsing inward before your mind even forms a thought. That's not you being insecure. That's the survival program activating. When someone interrupts you, you go silent. When someone criticizes you, you freeze. When someone pulls away, you chase. When someone needs you, you overextend. These are not conscious behaviors. These are conditioned responses encoded in your biology decades ago, and your body is so loyal to these responses that it executes them before you even realize what's happening. This is why you keep shrinking in conversations where you should expand, why you lose your voice around people who intimidate you, why you apologize for things that aren't your fault, why you tolerate what violates you. It's not that you lack confidence. It's that you were trained to survive by disappearing. Your nervous system believes that speaking your truth is dangerous because once it was. Your body is protecting you from a threat that no longer exists. But here's the trap. Your nervous system can't tell the difference between familiar and safe. It only knows that the familiar kept you alive. So when life brings you new opportunities, new relationships, new spaces to expand, your body interprets them as threats. Not because they're dangerous, but because they're unfamiliar. So it drags you back into old patterns, old emotions, old roles, not out of malice, but out of instinct. You're about to learn how to do that. There comes a moment in every soul's journey when the universe stops, whispering, and begins pressing. A quiet pressure at first, barely noticeable, just a strange heaviness behind your ribs, a thought that returns at the wrong times, a memory you can't fully name. But the more you resist it, the more it bends your inner timeline, twisting your path into detours you were never meant to walk. This is not punishment. It is the quantum field correcting your trajectory, pulling you toward the very feeling you have spent years building walls around. You think you moved on. You think you became stronger.
You think the old wound is buried under achievements,
habits, obsessions, or distractions. But the quantum field does not respond to masks. It responds to vibrations. And the vibration you hide the most becomes the frequency that shapes your reality the strongest. Every coincidence, every repeated pattern, every person who feels strangely familiar is simply the field echoing that unresolved frequency back to you again and again until you finally look at it. This is why certain situations trigger you instantly, even when logic says they shouldn't. This is why you sabotage opportunities just when they begin to open. This is why you pull back from people right when they get close. You are not reacting to the moment. You are reacting to the emotion buried beneath years of avoidance. The same emotion you were conditioned to dismiss. The same emotion your childhood self learned to fear. And here is the quantum truth you were never told. The emotions you suppress don't disappear. They fracture your timeline. They split you. One version of you keeps moving forward, doing what must be done, surviving. But another version gets frozen at the exact moment the emotion was denied. And until you return to that frozen version, the fracture keeps pulling at you like gravity. That is why certain memories feel strangely alive, as if they happened yesterday. That is why your mind returns to moments you would rather forget. You are not obsessed, you are being called. Your past self is knocking from inside the fracture, asking you to come back for them, to complete the loop, to reintegrate the emotion that got abandoned, because the universe knows something you don't. You cannot shift into a new reality while a part of you is still trapped in the old one. This is the point where most people run. They distract themselves, chase new highs, drown in noise, or numb the symptoms. But that only strengthens the fracture. The timeline becomes heavier. The patterns repeat faster and the field pushes harder. Each push disguised as bad luck, wrong timing, or why does this keep happening to me? The truth is simple and terrifying. Your next reality is on the other side of the emotion you fear the most. And until you face it, your life will keep looping, folding, resetting like a quantum simulation, waiting for the player to finally choose the path they avoided for too long. There is an emotion inside you that you've mistaken for weakness your entire life. The emotion you were taught to silence, to hide, to bury under being strong, moving on, or not making a scene. But in the quantum world, nothing you suppress is ever truly gone. It becomes a frequency, dense, magnetic, unspoken, echoing through your choices, your relationships, your patterns, your identity. This emotion is not your enemy. It is your compass. Every time it rises, it is trying to reveal the direction your soul was meant to grow. But because you've spent years avoiding it, the universe has had to speak louder. A person leaves, a plan collapses, something you trusted breaks. And with every collapse, you feel that old emotion rising again, the one you never wanted to face.
You call it pain.
The universe calls it alignment, because in quantum reality, the emotion with the strongest charge becomes the architect of your timeline, and the feeling you avoid the most becomes the one that controls you the most. Not because it's powerful, but because you refuse to look at it. What you fear, you obey. What you deny, you recreate. What you avoid, you attract. This is why the same lesson keeps reappearing, wearing different faces, different dates, different settings. It's the same emotion looping through different realities, waiting patiently for the moment you finally stop running. And in that moment, something extraordinary happens. The emotion shifts from being a shadow that hunts you to a key that frees you, because hidden inside that emotion is a truth you have never allowed yourself to fully feel. A truth that once acknowledged dissolves decades of resistance in seconds. A truth that rewires your inner frequency so deeply that the external world has no choice but to rearrange itself around your new vibration. Quantum alignment isn't about forcing change. It's about releasing the feeling that kept you out of alignment. And here is the paradox no one prepares you for. The moment you stop resisting the emotion stops controlling your reality. The tightness in your chest softens. The patterns lose their power. The memories stop hijacking your mind. You begin to breathe in full sentences again. For the first time in years, your inner world becomes quiet. Not because you escaped the feeling, but because you finally allowed it. You have spent so long surviving that you forgot something essential. Feeling is not the opposite of strength. Feeling is the birthplace of transformation. And once you allow this emotion to rise, fully honestly, without rushing or numbing, your frequency shifts at a cellular level. The old timeline begins to crumble. The fracture begins to heal. A new version of you, one that has been waiting just outside your fear, begins to crystallize. This is where destiny bends. This is where reality responds. There is a moment in your life you don't talk about anymore, not because you've healed from it, but because you've learned how to live around it. You built routines around the wound. You built habits that kept you from touching it. You built a personality tough enough to cover it. But the quantum field never forgot, because every unprocessed moment becomes a fracture in your timeline, an energetic crack where your power leaks out silently. Every single day, you think you moved on, but the field knows you didn't integrate it. And the proof is simple. Whenever life pushes you even slightly, you still react from that old version of yourself. The version who was hurt. The version who didn't feel safe. The version who didn't have the words, the tools, or the strength to fight back. That past version of you is still alive in your nervous system, still pulling strings inside your present reality. This is why certain situations trigger you instantly, even when you know better. This is why the same type of people show up. This is why you sometimes feel stuck, repeating patterns that don't make sense logically, but make perfect sense energetically. The quantum field is not punishing you. It is mirroring you. Every unhealed moment becomes a frequency, and every frequency attracts a matching timeline. That fracture in your past became a doorway, one that has been quietly redirecting the course of your life. Not out of cruelty, but out of precision. The universe keeps leading you back to the exact point where the fracture happened, because that is the only place where true reality shifting begins. You've been trying to change your future without touching your past. You've been rewriting your script while skipping the chapter that matters most. You've been building a new timeline on a foundation that was never repaired. And the universe? It refuses to let you build a kingdom on cracks. So it keeps sending reflections, people who trigger the old wound, situations that mirror the original pain, cycles that feel eerily familiar. Because the moment you face that fracture, truly face it, your entire frequency recalibrates. The version of you who was frozen there finally gets to move. And when they move, your entire timeline moves with them. This is why the most powerful quantum shifts don't feel like explosions of light. They feel like honesty. They feel like shaking hands with your younger self and saying, "It wasn't your fault." They feel like finally giving yourself the permission to stop pretending you were okay. The fracture in your timeline isn't a flaw, it's an invitation. An invitation to reclaim the energy you abandoned. An invitation to return to the exact moment where your destiny split. And choose differently. And the moment you choose differently, something profound happens. The past stops echoing into your present, and your future stops repeating your past. This is the turning point. This is where you stop surviving and start shifting. Fear is not the enemy you think it is. Fear is a frequency, a vibration your body emits when your soul is brushing against a truth you've spent years avoiding. And the closer you get to that buried truth, the louder the fear becomes, not to stop you, but to signal that you are approaching the doorway to transformation. You've spent so long interpreting fear as a warning that you never realized it's actually a map. A map pointing directly to the part of you that's still carrying an old timeline, an old belief, an old identity, and every time you get close to releasing it, fear rises like a fog, thick, confusing, disorienting, so you step back, retreat, distract, or numb. But here's the paradox the quantum field understands and most humans don't. Your fear doesn't rise when you're in danger. It rises when you're about to evolve. And this is why you keep misreading the signals of your own life. Every time you're on the edge of a breakthrough, the fear feels identical to the fear you once felt during the breakdown. So you assume something bad is coming. You assume the past is repeating. You assume you're about to lose something. But in reality, you're about to outgrow something. Fear is the final guardian standing between who you were and who you are becoming. It is the voice of your old self trying to keep you in familiar territory, whispering, "Don't change." We don't know what happens if you change, but fear only knows the past. It cannot see your future. It cannot see the timeline that is calling you forward. It cannot feel the expansion that your soul is ready for. And this is where your power lies. When fear rises, you don't collapse, you observe. When fear tightens, you don't run, you breathe. When fear screams, you don't obey, you listen beneath the noise. Because beneath fear, there is always a deeper frequency. A frequency of truth, a frequency of clarity, a frequency of alignment. Fear is only the surface wave. What lives underneath it is the entire ocean. And the moment you stop fighting fear and start feeling it, something extraordinary happens. The vibration shifts. The intensity softens. The grip loosens. A strange calm emerges, like your body finally realizing we're not in danger. We're just stepping into a new timeline. This is how quantum expansion works. Fear rises when your vibration is stretching into a frequency your old identity cannot survive. And that is exactly what you want. So instead of asking, "Why am I scared?" you begin asking, "What part of me is transforming?" And that single shift, one question, one breath, one moment of awareness becomes the beginning of an entirely new reality. Fear is not the barrier. Fear is the signal. The signal that your next level is not far away. It's right behind the feeling you've been avoiding. There is a point in your inner transformation where the external world begins to feel strangely unstable. Not in a chaotic way, but in a shifting, bending, rearranging way. Conversations feel different. People start reacting to you differently. Opportunities appear out of nowhere. Old patterns dissolve with almost no effort. It feels surreal, almost dreamlike, as if the world around you is suddenly paying attention to something it ignored for years. And it is. Because this is the moment your reality starts listening. The quantum field doesn't respond to what you want. It responds to what you are. And when your internal frequency shifts, when you finally face the emotion you avoided, repair the fracture you ignored, and walk through the fear you once escaped, your energy stops broadcasting survival and starts broadcasting creation. That is when everything around you begins to reorganize, quietly, effortlessly, precisely. You may notice time feels different. Days move faster, synchronicities appear like signposts. Strangers say things that feel uncannily relevant. You keep seeing the same numbers, the same symbols, the same patterns, like reality is whispering, yes, keep going. This isn't coincidence. This is coherence. Your inner world and outer world are finally vibrating at compatible frequencies. And when coherence happens, reality becomes pliable, soft, malleable, responsive. It starts bending not through force but through resonance. The universe stops testing you and starts co-creating with you. Because growth has two phases. First, the universe mirrors your wounds so you can confront them. Then it mirrors your power so you can embody it. And this second phase feels like magic. Not the loud kind. The quiet kind. The kind that slips into your life unnoticed at first. A call that goes better than expected. A door that opens with no effort. A situation that used to trigger you but now feels neutral, almost silent. This is the moment you realize something profound. The world doesn't change when you think different thoughts. The world changes when you become a different frequency. Your presence begins to carry a new texture, more grounded, more magnetic, more certain. People feel it instantly, even if they don't understand it. Your aura expands, your boundaries sharpen, your intuition strengthens. Your energy stops leaking into old timelines, and the universe responds. Not because you asked, but because you aligned. Your reality is no longer running on the autopilot of old emotions. It is responding to the new version of you, the one who is awake, conscious, coherent, grounded, and finally connected to their own power. This is the beginning of quantum command, the phase where you stop adapting to life, and life starts adapting to you. There comes a moment in your evolution where the old version of you begins to lose its gravitational pull. The habits that once felt automatic suddenly feel heavy. The people who once felt familiar now feel distant, almost out of sync. The beliefs you carried for years start dissolving like mist under light. It feels unsettling at first because every timeline has its own gravity. And your old timeline is trying to pull you back. Not out of malice, but out of momentum. You lived in that frequency for so long that your nervous system still thinks it's okay. So when you begin to rise, everything connected to your old identity tries to cling to you. Old emotions, old reactions, old fears, old urges, old attachments. This is not regression. This is the collapse. When a star collapses, it doesn't vanish, it compresses into a denser form before exploding into something new. Your old self works the same way. Before it disappears, it intensifies. The patterns become louder. The thoughts become clearer. The triggers become sharper. It's the final flare of a version of you that is about to die, and you can feel it, deep in your bones, like your inner world is rearranging pieces you didn't even know were movable. This is why, right before a breakthrough, everything feels unstable. Your desires change. Your intuition sharpens. Your tolerance for misalignment drops to zero. Even your body begins rejecting the frequencies that keep you small. It's not burnout. It's not confusion. It's not being lost. It's energetic detachment. You are separating from a timeline that cannot follow you forward. People sense the shift too. Some will be drawn to your rising frequency. Others will feel threatened by it. Some will try to pull you back into who you used to be. Others will silently step away because they can no longer resonate with the energy you're stepping into. Don't chase what falls away. Don't cling to what collapses. The universe is removing the gravitational anchors that kept you, orbiting the same emotional reality. This collapse is sacred. It is alignment disguised as disruption. It is evolution disguised as chaos. It is expansion disguised as loss. Because here's the truth most people never realize. Before your new timeline can pull you in, your old one must lose its power over you. And that loss of power feels like identity death. But it is actually identity birth. You are not falling apart. You are falling out of everything that kept you limited, contracted, controlled, conditioned, and disconnected from your true frequency. The collapse is not the end. It's the clearing. The clearing that makes space for the version of you that finally embodies the life you've been trying to manifest for years. There is a version of you that has been waiting in the shadows of your potential. Patient, silent, unshakable. You've felt glimpses of this self in rare moments. When your intuition speaks louder than logic. When your presence feels magnetic. When you sense a power inside you that you can't explain but can't deny. This version of you isn't imaginary. It's your quantum identity. The self that exists beyond fear, beyond conditioning, beyond the stories you were taught to believe. And right now this identity is waking up. But awakening doesn't feel like fireworks. It feels like clarity. A quiet clarity that cuts through your illusions with unsettling precision. You start seeing the difference between what your soul wants and what your wounds want. Between desire and distraction. Between intuition and impulse. Between growth and attachment. You become hyper-aware of the frequency behind your choices. You feel the energy behind people's words. You sense the truth behind situations long before your mind understands them. This is not overthinking. This is energetic intelligence. Your quantum identity doesn't communicate through thoughts. It communicates through vibration. Through the subtle pull you feel toward something. Through the sudden knowing that a door isn't meant for you. Through the instinctive recognition of what aligns and what drains. And the more you listen, the more your reality shifts. You start making decisions differently. Not from fear, but from resonance. Not from pressure, but from clarity. Not from habit, but from higher intention. You no longer chase. You attract. You no longer fight for space. Your energy creates space. You no longer tolerate chaos. Your presence reorganizes it. This is when life begins to feel strangely lighter. Not because things become easy, but because you stop carrying what was never meant for you. Roles you outgrew. Beliefs that were never yours. Expectations placed on you by people who never understood your frequency. Your quantum identity strips away. Everything artificial. Until only the true self remains. The self that is powerful without performing, aligned without effort, magnetic without trying, whole without validation. And as this identity emerges, something miraculous happens. Your manifestation speed increases. Not because you learned new techniques, but because you removed the interference, the outdated self-image that kept blocking your field. Manifestation is not about convincing the universe. It's about remembering who you already are. And once you awaken to that truth, your reality has no choice but to rearrange itself around your new, coherent frequency. This is not confidence. This is embodiment. The moment where your inner self and outer life finally begin to match. Every emotion you've ever repeated became a chemical pattern in your body. Your cells learned your sadness. Your heartbeat memorized your fear. Your muscles stored your disappointment. Your nervous system rehearsed your stress until it became the default script you unconsciously lived inside. You weren't just feeling emotions. You were becoming them. And this is the part most people never understand. Your emotional patterns are not psychological. They are energetic. They create a vibrational field that the quantum universe has no choice but to respond to. This is why your old reality felt so repetitive. It wasn't fate. It was chemistry. But something extraordinary begins to happen when your identity shifts. Your body starts rejecting the emotions that no longer match the frequency of your becoming. This rejection feels like discomfort at first, restlessness, emotional shedding, random waves of sadness or anger, memories resurfacing out of nowhere. It feels like your body is detoxing from a version of you that you lived in for years, because that's exactly what's happening. You are withdrawing from your old emotional addiction. Yes, addiction. Not to substances, but to states of being. Humans become chemically addicted to familiar emotional patterns, even when those emotions hurt them. That's why people stay in cycles they consciously want to escape. It's not weakness. It's withdrawal. But now your frequency is rising and your body is panicking. It doesn't understand the new energy yet. It only knows the old emotional chemistry that kept you safe. So what happens? Your old emotions start firing randomly, trying to pull you back into the familiar. The sadness you thought you healed reappears. The anger resurfaces. The insecurity whispers. The anxiety tightens. Not because you're regressing, but because your body is trying to recalibrate. You are not breaking down. You are breaking open. And as your emotional chemistry collapses, your field becomes lighter, cleaner, more coherent. You start feeling emotions you rarely allowed yourself to feel. Peace, certainty, groundedness, inner power. These aren't positive emotions. They are aligned emotions, the natural state of a nervous system not hijacked by old timelines. This is the moment your power becomes embodied, not imagined, not forced. embodied. Because emotional transformation isn't about thinking differently, it's about feeling differently at a cellular level. When the chemistry changes, the frequency changes. When the frequency changes, the reality changes. Your old emotional body is dying. Your new energetic self is being born. And every timeline you align with from this point forward will reflect the emotional freedom you are finally allowing yourself to experience. Every pattern you've repeated for years, every reaction, every emotional loop, every habitual thought was once a survival tool. It kept you alive, kept you safe, kept the world predictable when the world felt dangerous. But now those same patterns are chains. Invisible chains that drain your energy, cloud your clarity, and dictate the boundaries of your reality without your consent. You don't realize how much of your life is a replay of these old programs. You wake up with the same anxiety, respond to the same triggers, repeat the same mistakes, attract the same type of people, and over. You wonder why life feels like a loop you cannot escape. But loops only exist because your nervous system keeps running the same code, expecting the same results. It's not fate. It's biology. Here's the truth that most people never understand. Patterns are only powerful until you see them clearly, until you bring full awareness to the moment before the reaction, until you recognize the automatic pull of the old programming and choose differently. This is why the pattern no longer binds you, because observation is the first act of freedom. When you notice the trigger, feel the surge of the old emotion, and intervene before the program completes, you are literally unfiring the neurons that have been rehearsing that pattern for decades. Neurons that no longer fire together, no longer wire together. Heavy and learning in reverse, the old circuitry begins to weaken. The chemical addiction to your own anxiety, fear or self-doubt begins to lose its grip. And here is where the quantum aspect becomes undeniable. Every time you disrupt the old pattern, the field itself begins to respond. Reality starts to mirror your inner intervention. People behave differently toward you. Situations shift in ways that were impossible before. Opportunities appear that would have been invisible to the old version of you. The frequency you broadcast, the one governed by choice, awareness and presence, rewrites the magnetic pull of your life. This is not about trying harder. It's about interrupting smarter, not reacting unconsciously but responding consciously. And the moment you begin to do this consistently, something profound happens. The old self loses its authority. The patterns lose their automaticity. Your body stops leading you unconsciously. Your nervous system starts taking orders from the conscious you, the version that is awake, aware, and free. This is not a small change. This is the dismantling of the prison that has governed your life since childhood. This is the liberation of your energy, your power, your attention, your reality. And once that energy is free, you can begin to construct a life that doesn't echo the past. A life that responds to your conscious choice, not your conditioned reaction. Everything in your reality is responding to a vibration you emit. Not your words, not your intentions, not even your goals, but the frequency of your energy, the unseen current flowing from your nervous system, your body, your emotional state. And here's the thing most people never realize. Your frequency is not random. It is a precise echo of your unconscious patterns, your memorized reactions, your emotional addictions, your unresolved memories. For decades, your frequency has been dominated by the old you, by fear, by self-doubt, by survival mode patterns etched into your biology. The universe doesn't judge you. It simply mirrors the energy you broadcast. That is why the same situations keep showing up. That is why the same type of people keep appearing. That is why your life feels like a loop you can't escape. Resonance works with precision. What you emit, you attract. What you tolerate, you replicate. What you believe, you magnetize. And here is the liberating truth. When your frequency changes, your reality must respond. The quantum field has no choice but to realign with the energy you carry. This is why awareness is everything. The moment you step into conscious choice, interrupting old patterns, unfiring old neurons, allowing previously suppressed emotions, you shift your vibration at a foundational level. You are no longer broadcasting the energy of fear or limitation. You are broadcasting the energy of presence, alignment, and conscious creation. Every time you feel fear arise, every time you notice your habitual pull to shrink or people please, and you intervene, say change, you are recalibrating your frequency. You are telling your nervous system that the old pattern is no longer valid. You are weakening the chemical addiction to outdated emotional states. You are raising your resonance. And the field responds immediately, not in abstract ways, in precise, tangible ways. The people, opportunities, and situations in your life begin to vibrate in alignment with your new state. They either shift to match your energy or fall away, no longer resonating with your new frequency. This is why transformation often feels disruptive at first. The world resists change until your vibration proves stronger than the old gravitational pull of your past. Resonance is not about forcing outcomes. It's about becoming a frequency that naturally pulls the life you are meant to inhabit. This is the quantum secret. You do not need to chase your dreams. You do not need to will yourself into a different reality. You simply need to embody the frequency of the reality you desire. And when your frequency aligns with that version of yourself, the field conspires to bring it into being. Your outer world is a reflection of your inner resonance. And the moment you master your vibration, you master your life. There is a tool more powerful than willpower, more precise than affirmations, more immediate than intention. One word, one single word that can interrupt decades of conditioning, break the chains of unconscious patterns, and shift your nervous system in real time. That word is change. But it is not a wish. It is not a hope. It is a command. The power of this word lies in its simplicity. When the old thought arises, the thought of fear, inadequacy, shame, or contraction, you speak the word change aloud, and your body, your chemistry, your nervous system is forced to pause. That pause creates the gap. That gap interrupts the program before it completes. That gap is where freedom lives. This is not mental effort. This is neurological intervention. Every time you say change, you are literally unfiring old neurons. You are preventing the chemical cascade that would have locked you into the old pattern. You are telling your body, we are not doing this anymore, and the nervous system listens because it knows no higher authority than immediate instruction in real time. This word carries your consciousness into the present moment where choice exists. It brings awareness to the precise point where past and future collide. And in that moment, you reclaim your energy. You reclaim your life force. You reclaim the part of yourself that has been trapped in loops for decades. It does not work once and then fade. It works every time you practice it. The repetition of conscious interruption weakens the old circuitry, dissolves the chemical addiction to outdated emotions, and allows new neural pathways to form. Neurons that no longer fire together no longer wire together. Old programming begins to dissolve. And here's the mystical part. The quantum field begins to respond. Because your inner frequency has shifted. Because the energy you emit is no longer entangled with the past. Because your presence is no longer governed by unconscious loops. Reality adjusts instantly, reflecting the new frequency you have claimed. The word is small. The impact is immense. It becomes a signal to your body, mind, and the universe that you are awake. That you are no longer a prisoner of your past. That you are consciously stepping into the life you were always capable of creating. Every time you catch yourself with this word, every time you disrupt the old program, you are building a new version of yourself, stronger, freer, more aligned, more magnetic. And each repetition compounds, like a ripple that becomes a wave, until your entire reality is a reflection of your conscious command. This is the gateway. This is the quantum lever. This is the single word that bends reality to your alignment. Now the final step, embodiment. All the awareness, all the interruptions, all the words, all the shifts converge here. This is where transformation stops being theoretical and starts being lived. This is where your energy, your nervous system, your chemistry, and your frequency fully align with the new version of yourself you've been creating. Embodiment is not about perfection. It's not about being free from triggers, emotions, or patterns forever. It's about ownership. Ownership of your presence. Ownership of your reactions. Ownership of your energy. Ownership of your life force. When you embody your new timeline, you are no longer reacting to reality. You are co-creating it moment by moment. Every choice you make is intentional. Every thought is conscious. Every emotion is witnessed before it commands your body. You move through life with precision, not because you are controlling it, but because you are aligned with it. The old programs that once dictated your reactions have been weakened. The chemistry of fear, shame, and inadequacy no longer hijacks your nervous system. Your body is now an instrument of presence, not autopilot survival. The quantum field responds instantly. Opportunities, synchronicities, and aligned situations begin to manifest with speed and clarity. People in your life either shift to match your frequency or drift away, no longer anchored to the old version of you. You begin to attract experiences that resonate with your authentic self, not your conditioned self. And this is the most important truth. Embodiment is continuous. The gap, the word, the interruption, they are tools, not events. Your life becomes a practice of conscious alignment. Each day, each moment. Each trigger is an invitation to strengthen the new neural pathways, to reinforce the frequency that now governs your reality. You will feel fear. You will feel old urges. Old patterns may attempt to pull you back, but you no longer fear them. You no longer obey them unconsciously. You observe, you interrupt, you redirect, you choose differently, and each choice compounds into mastery. Embodiment is freedom. Freedom is power. Power is alignment, and alignment is the ultimate act of creation. Your new timeline is not a distant dream. It is already here, waiting for you to inhabit it fully. The old self fades, the nervous system rewires, and your energy broadcasts a frequency so coherent that the universe can only respond with expansion, manifestation, and alignment. This is not transformation. This is reclamation. The reclamation of your energy, your presence, your life. The reclamation of the you who was always meant to emerge. The gap, the word, the interruption, they were never just techniques. They were the keys to unlocking the version of yourself that was always possible. Step into it, live it, and let your reality bend to the alignment of your true self.